Good morning, and I'm going to read from 1 Corinthians chapter 15, starting at verse 51. This is the Apostle Paul writing, and he's writing in reference to the rapture of the church in these verses that I'm about to read. And so I want to make a few comments after I read these verses. He says, "Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep," or the word sleep is a euphemism for the word death or die. "We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality, then shall it be brought to pass the saying that is written, Death is swallowed up in victory." Now, if you go back to verse 51, where he says, "I show you a mystery," the rapture was a mystery that was hidden, that the Apostle Paul made known to the believers in his time. And even though there was references to the rapture, even in the Tanakh or the Old Testament, and I've done a number of videos about those particular scriptures over, especially in the book of Isaiah or Yashayahu, chapter 26, and also in reference to Isaiah chapter 57, and there's other places that make reference to the rapture, but you would not maybe recognize it if you were not aware of the rapture itself, that this is what these verses had reference to. But in this particular verse here, notice what Paul says. He says, "We shall not all sleep or die, but we shall all be changed." Now, there's a couple of word here that I want you to notice is the word "all." And he says, "We shall not all die, but we shall all be changed." Now, we know that because if you go back to now 1 Thessalonians, or go over to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, Paul also writing about this particular event says, "But I would not," in verse 13 of chapter 4, "But I would not have you be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, or those that have died, that you sorrow not even as others which have no hope. For if we believe that Yahusha died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Yahusha will Yahusha bring with him. For this we say unto you by the word of Yahusha, that we which are alive and remain until the coming of Yahusha shall not prevent or go before them which are asleep or which have died. For Yahusha himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, and with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of Yahuwah, and the dead in Mashiach shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them to meet Yahusha in the air, and so shall we ever be with Yahusha. Wherefore comfort one another with these words." Now, the reason I'm going over these verses, even though most of you are very familiar with these, but in talking about who is worthy to go in the rapture, notice in both of these particular verses that I've read, there is no mention that some would be going and some believers would not. Paul, in fact, used the word in 1 Corinthians 15 that we shall all be changed from mortal to be immortal. Of course, this letter is written to the church in Corinth, and this is written to believers. So it's not written to non-believers. So non-believers, this is not a reference to them. This is a reference to believers. So if there was any hint that only certain believers would go in the rapture and some would not, the Apostle Paul never would have used the words all. He said, we all shall be changed. We all shall be caught up, as he mentions in verse 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. We shall all be caught up together to meet Yahusha in the air, and so shall we ever be with him. Again, these verses point to the fact that all true believers, now see, this is the key, is true believers. There are people who claim to be believers. There are people who claim that they're saved and they're born again. There's people who do a lot of identification, say, with Christianity. But whether they truly are or not, really, Yahusha knows those that are his. So, but the fact is that all true believers will go in the rapture. Again, hope this comforts you, and we'll pick this up on our next session together. Thank you. Shalom.